The room smelled of quiet decay, of old memories, and of the faint, clean scent of lavender oil. The sheer white curtains fluttered gently against the frame of an open window, letting in the soft, cool hum of the approaching evening breeze. On the massive, king-size bed lay Richard Halberg. He had once been a titan of steel and construction, a man whose voice could command boardrooms and whose vision could raise cities from the dust. But now he was a withering, fragile shell, a landscape of bones wrapped in fine beige linens. His chest rose and fell, a slow, shallow, and almost imperceptible rhythm, as fragile as a sleeping child's. What happens when a man who has everything is confronted by a woman who has nothing but love? Today's story is about a ruthless millionaire who returns home to find his dying father being cared for by a simple maid. But her next words, a secret she has held for 17 years, will bring him to his knees and force him to confront the true meaning of family. If you believe in the power of second chances and the quiet strength of kindness, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Corner. Your support helps us share these stories that remind us of the goodness we still need in this world. Behind her, standing in the doorway like a statue carved from cold hard stone, was Gregory Halberg, Richard's only son. In his mid-30s, he was dressed in expensive tailored slacks and a pale blue, custom-made shirt. He looked at the deeply emotional, intimate scene before him, not with grief, not with sadness, but with a cold, sharp, very visible irritation. Miriam turned her tear-streaked face toward him, her own expression a mixture of a deep, personal grief and a new, dawning, protective anger. Gregory stepped further into the room, his dismissive gaze sweeping over the familiar, beloved space with a cold disdain. And another thing he said, his tone that of a man discussing a simple and slightly annoying business transaction. This place, ... it is costing a fortune to maintain. I'm selling it. We will be firing the entire staff. All of you. Effective. Immediately, Miriam gasped, the word a small, wounded sound in the quiet room. You can't, she said, her voice now a fierce, protective whisper. This is his home. He doesn't want to die in a cold hospital bed, surrounded by the beeping of machines and the faces of strangers. Gregory scoffed, a short, ugly, and utterly dismissive sound, as he began to pace the room. You're delusional, he said. You're just another employee who has gotten far too attached. Gregory rolled his neck, a gesture of pure bored annoyance. Oh, here we go, he muttered. But she didn't stop. 17 years ago, she began, her voice rising with a powerful, righteous passion. I was sleeping on a bench outside a church. My own infant son had just died from pneumonia. I was lost. I was hungry. I hadn't spoken to a single kind soul in weeks. And then your father, he pulled up in his old beat-up blue pickup truck. Gregory crossed his arms, his own expression a mask of pure bored indifference. He gave me food, she continued, her voice now a torrent of memory and emotion. He gave me this job, but more than that, so much more than that. He gave me back my dignity. He never asked me for my qualifications. He never treated me like I was less than him. He said to me, a house is only a real home if it has a heart. And I think, my dear, that you still have one. Tears poured down her cheeks now, hot and unstoppable. Do you know how many birthdays I have celebrated with him? How many times he insisted that I sit at the dinner table with him, not behind it, serving? Gregory looked away, a muscle in his jaw clenching. Taught me how to write my first check. She whispered, he taught me how to drive, taught me how to dream again. A profound, heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the faint, steady beep of Richard's heart monitor. Miriam turned to face him fully now, a warrior fighting for the honor of her fallen king. And where were you, Gregory? She asked, her voice now a low, dangerous sound. Where were you, all those long, lonely years? He didn't answer. She took a step closer, her small frame shaking with a powerful, righteous fury. You never called him on Christmas. You never sent him a single birthday card. You didn't even make a damn phone call when he had his first heart attack? Shh. And now you show up, and you want to throw him into a cold, sterile hospital ward like he's a piece of inconvenient luggage, like he's already gone. Miriam wasn't finished. You think? We are nothing, she said, her voice now tightening like a fist, because we wear aprons and mop your floors. But your father, your father, he saw us. All of us. The broken, the forgotten, the invisible. She turned from him then, her anger suddenly dissolving into a wave of profound, overwhelming grief. She dropped to her knees beside the bed again, and pressed her forehead to Richard's frail old hand. I used to call him Papa in secret, she whispered. Her voice now a broken, sobbing sound, because he treated me more like a daughter than my own father ever did. Gregory's face, which had been a mask of cold, hard irritation, began to twitch. And now she sobbed, her words a torrent of love and pain. You want to take him away from the only place he ever truly called home? You want to let him die on cold white sheets, under the harsh flickering lights of a hospital, when he deserves the warmth of his own bed. The familiar smell of this house, the quiet, gentle hum of the life he built. With love, she leaned closer to the old man, her voice a soft, final, and utterly devastating whisper. But every single word was aimed, like a perfectly sharpened arrow, directly at Gregory's heart. You are not worthy to call him your father, Gregory, she said, because you have only returned to count your inheritance, not to cherish his final moments. Gregory flinched, as if she had physically struck him. Miriam then turned, her own tear-filled eyes now burning through him. You didn't lose a father today, she said. You gave him up a long, long time ago. His mouth parted, but no words came out. Suddenly on the bed, Richard stirred. His fingers, which had been so still, moved again, just a barely perceptible twitch. But it was enough. Miriam gasped and held his hand tighter. Gregory took a single, shaky, uncertain step forward. For the very first time since he had entered the room, his cold, corporate armor began to crack. And then Miriam delivered the final, life-altering blow. Her voice was barely above a whisper, a secret shared between a father and the daughter. Of his heart, Gregory staggered back as if he had been shot. His knees, which had held him up through 1,000 ruthless business deals, finally and completely buckled. The walls he had so carefully, so meticulously built around his own heart, crumbled into dust. And for the very first time in 20 long, lonely, and loveless years, Gregory Halberg fell to his knees on the cold, hard wooden floor, and he began to weep. For a long, breathless moment, he couldn't move. His eyes were wide, fixed on the woman he had barely even looked at for his entire life. The woman who was now kneeling beside the man who had raised them both. In such profoundly and tragically different ways, Miriam didn't answer. She didn't have to. Tears, hot and shameful, now welled in Gregory's eyes, his carefully constructed pride finally and completely giving way to something raw, something honest, and something true. Regret, a deep, searing, and all-consuming regret. He looked at his father's still peaceful face, at the weathered lines that held the stories of decades of his own sacrifice, of his own silent and very lonely hope. That day, Gregory called the hospital and canceled the transfer. The staff were not fired. The house remained exactly as it was, and Richard Halberg stayed home. Over the next 2 precious and transformative months, something miraculous began to shift in the quiet old house. Gregory came back every single morning, sometimes with flowers from the garden, sometimes just with a quiet, companionable silence. He brought the old photo albums, the dusty vinyl records, and even the worn leather baseball glove his father had once gifted him when he was just 8 years old. He sat by the bed and he read aloud. He fed his father soup when his own hands trembled too much to hold the spoon. He wiped his chin, not with shame, but with a new and very profound tenderness. He laughed at the old half-forgotten stories, and through it all, Miriam remained by Richard's side, his constant, his comfort, his daughter in every single way. But something had changed between her and Gregory too. It was not just a shift in their roles, it was a healing. One afternoon, as Gregory helped his father sit up, Richard opened his eyes and whispered, "I waited for you, son." Gregory's throat tightened. He nodded and held his father's hand. "I'm here now, Dad. I'm not going anywhere." And he didn't. On a warm evening, exactly 2 months later, the sun cast a golden light across the room as a soft melody played from the old record player in the corner. Miriam had chosen the song. It was Richard's favorite, one she used to hum while dusting the hallways. Richard's breathing had slowed. The air was calm, sacred, and still. Gregory was seated beside him, cradling his father's head gently in his arm, his other hand gripping Richard's tightly. Miriam stood near, watching with red-rimmed eyes, her hands clasped over her heart. Richard opened his eyes one last time. They glistened, not with pain, but with peace. His lips parted into a tired but genuine smile. Tears rolled silently down both their faces. And then he said with a voice barely audible, "I'm the happiest man in the world." A final breath escaped. His lips, and he was gone. Miriam's cry was quiet, filled with love and gratitude rather than despair. Gregory bowed his head over his father's chest, holding him as if he could somehow freeze that moment in time. They buried Richard in the garden behind the mansion, just under the old oak tree he had planted the year Gregory was born. The funeral was small, intimate. Gregory stood and spoke, his voice shaking. "I thought money was the most valuable thing my father gave me, but I was wrong. The real treasure was this home, his wisdom, and the people he loved." He turned toward Miriam and paused, his voice cracking, especially her. Miriam wept silently. From that day forward, Gregory never let her go. He gave her her own room in the house, no longer the maid's quarters, but the guest room with the best view of the garden. He introduced her to friends as family. On holidays, she sat beside him at the head of the table. And every year on the anniversary of his father's death, they sat under the old oak tree, lit a candle, remembered the man who taught them both what it meant to love beyond blood. If this story touched your heart, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more powerful, emotional, and surprising stories. And tell us in the comments where are you watching from. We love hearing your stories too. Until next time, stay kind, stay inspired, and keep watching.